Welcome to the standardization session in track 1. My name is Wolfgang Kampichler. I'm co-chair of the EENA Technical and Operations Committee, and I'm also with Frequentis. And I'm really happy to introduce two very experienced persons when it gets to standardization. Yeah? So we actually made a huge step forward, because I remember when I introduced the long-term definition document years ago in one of the EENA conferences, it happened that one person in the audience gave very good comments, and it was great discussion and great interworking, and I think that was a starting point to collaborate from the EENA side with ETSI. Because the person happened to be the chairman of the MTEL group at ETSI, the DC MTEL, which is responsible for emergency telecommunications standardization. And as I said, huge step forward, because today we have Luis Romero, on the stage. He is Director General at ETSI, and he will talk about the standardization work at ETSI. And we also have a very well-experienced person in 3GPP standardization. He's Jukka Vialen. He is SA6 Vice Chair in 3GPP, and he will also introduce the work that is being done at 3GPP level. And we have a third speaker. Unfortunately, he could not make it on stage, but we will have him presenting via video. And yeah, that's it for the introduction. I will just hand over to you, Luis, to introduce the work at ETSI. Yes, perhaps let's give our speakers a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Wolfgang, for this. And well, good afternoon, everybody. I have a challenge now because it's after lunch, and I'm Spanish, and you know what comes after lunch in Spain. So I'll try to, and it's going to be difficult with standards. In fact, Wolfgang, you've gone down 1 degree, because I know much less of standards than probably the chair of DCNTEL did, and I can warranty you that. But what I can definitely do is tell you a little bit why it is so important for this community, why it is so important for emergency communications, de-standardization. And I would also like to try and introduce you a little bit what ETSI is, what ETSI tries to do, and how we're trying to help the community come together. And that's why the title is about emergency communications and ETSI. Emergency communications come first. Yes, so first of all, a little bit about ETSI. Indeed, if you see, our vision is trying to be kind of the best ever in standardization in ICT. Our vision, that's where we want to go. And you're helping us, or the community is helping us to be there. Because we work in a very open environment. Participation, direct participation from industry, from governments, from everybody is fundamental. We are in the independent, non-profit organization. We've been more than 30 years working in standards, and probably we are best known for GSM. But then this has given birth to all the evolution of technologies that come with the mobile phones that probably all of you have today in your pockets, and that have enabled that each one of us can have a mobile phone in our pockets. More than 900 members are part of our community, and this is the brain, these are the intellect that is inputting in the standards and in the quality of what you get at the end of the day in the products that we use in ICT. There's another piece which is very important. Being 900 members coming from more than 60 countries all over the world, so being very global in this sense. On the other side, we have a very deep root in Europe. And this gives a great leverage to what we do, because we help building the single market in Europe. I think this is important for Europe, but it's important also for the world to try and help grow in these markets. This is a little bit about us. Okay, the wrong button. And why us? So why standards? And definitely, yeah, it's about technology, but it's much more. It's about creating communities that want to solve problems together. Because if we solve problems together, the solution will stay, will remain. You will use the solution. If for the same problem we create different solutions, it starts getting complicated, and particularly when the solutions to be developed requires investment. So with that, what we enable is economies of scale. Drive interoperability. Interoperability is key. Being able to have several manufacturers working on a specific subject and then being able to put all the pieces together and having them work is what's at the core of a standardization. So basically, what you want to do is you design once, you deploy multiple times. And you need to make things future-proof. You don't want to invest lots into a solution and then have to drop it just because it's obsolete. Well, no, the solution needs to grow with you as fast or as far as it can, because this is also part of the cost in the equation. And this also gives solid grounds on where to continue innovating. If we go back to the different generations of mobile communications, you will see that there have been huge changes, but the evolution in generations are learning from the previous one. When you have a solid and stable ground, you don't reinvent the wheel once and again and again. So the fact is that you have like a ladder and you're climbing step by step through the ladder thanks to a solid, stable status, which is standards. And indeed, what we produce are documents. And you will see that there are many different kinds of documents, but each one of them has a specific purpose. And they all fit the needs of what the community needs. And going from those pieces of, or those documents that are drafted in support of or can be used in support of legislation, so, and therefore have to be approved by national standard organizations and therefore backed by member states. So we're talking of European standards and harmonized standards. You also have, and we do produce, lots of technical specifications. I would say that this is the core of what we produce, because this is what experts produce in order to develop our technologies. And they don't have to go through a full approval process, which is more fitting into what legislation would require, but fits what industry requires to produce their products. And all the experts are happy with what is being produced, so that's our technical specifications. At the end of the day, the quality of the content, of the technical content, both of European standards, technical specifications, is probably the same. Now, the legal backing of a European standard is much higher. So then again, you can producing what you need, when you need it, how you need it. And I have talked about ETSI, about what you produce, about what we do, but I have not talked about emergency communications yet. For ETSI, emergency communications are fundamental, are very key. It's part of several of our working groups, and I will come to that afterwards. And it's a critical piece of work that we develop in ETSI. And we do that because the community has decided that we help you develop these standards. This comes back to early 2000s, that we started to create a group devoted to this emergency communications. But even before that, E112 was part of legislation and was part of what had to be implemented in our technologies. And GSM was born with this E112 in mind. And I still remember my old days when we had to put everything in place, even to route these 112 calls. And that already proved to be challenging in those early days. But again, the standards were built with this 112 in mind, and from there onwards. So looking at today, we have a committee, which TC is a technical committee. So we have a technical committee that is core to the development of this work. And we are happy to have Christina as the chair of this committee, and the committee is doing great. But we also have many other committees that work on these emergency communications. So the Mobile Standards Group, TETRA, so you may imagine that it's not only the horizontal approach to emergency communications that we work on. So emergency communications, again, is quite core to ETSI's business. There are a few interesting topics. First of all, that we cover all kinds of scenarios you may imagine in terms of communication. So from user to the communication center, from communication center to communication center, and emergency center to emergency center, and so on and so forth. And today, the core main topics, and probably Wolfgang could be able to talk to this slide better than I would, but just to give you a hint, there are a few specific issues that are being addressed today. One is trying to rethink this access to emergency services, so reviewing all the different core elements in the architecture for the new generation emergency services. Also, trying to include video, audio, and real-time text for these emergency communications. Working on the pan-European mobile emergency application. So how to promote or accept or enable that applications could carry the E112, to put an example, though it wouldn't be exactly that. Working as well in the public warning system, using self-broadcast, and this comes from a very long time, but I think there's a lot of improvements to be put in there. And also emergency communications network resilience and preparedness. Last, I would also like to highlight that very recently we have been able to launch this Aml Specification, which is important because it will allow that location information is passed together with the call, and is one of the bits that's in support of European legislation. And I don't want to forget about testing and interoperability. If there is something which also makes ETSI different from some of our colleagues all over the world, is that we put very high in our agenda the need to test. The need to test the solutions against the standard. So basically, when somebody develops, we want to see that in this development of the product, the standard has been properly implemented. So basically, we may find that in the implementation of the product, there are ambiguities in the way the standard has been written. So it's a good process to see that the standard is well written, but then it's also a very good process in order to understand that the different solutions interoperate with each other. So several vendors can come together and try to interconnect their own implementations of the standard. I think this is fundamental to the quality of what we produce. I would like to highlight these plug tests on NG112 because they were launched back in 2016, and despite the pandemic in the middle, we have had already a few. I started with EENA and ETSI, and it was last year that we joined NENA, so the North American Emergency Number Association, to the party. And it happened to be a very interesting event where we could test all together our solutions. And we'll keep on organizing these kind of tests because they are good for standards, but they are especially good for the community. And to wrap up, emergency communications, always fundamental for us in ETSI. We believe, of course, we have to believe that standards are key to fast and sustainable development of our solutions. And I hope you would agree with me on that. It is your engagement that counts. We have no clue of technology. It's you that have the knowledge, it's you that have the experts, it's you that know what needs to be done. Interoperability, I'll repeat it again, because it's fundamental to ensure that the standards are proper and are high quality, and we'll, as ETSI, will keep on being very committed to this community and to emergency communications. So that's all from now, and I'll open the floor for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. Do we have questions from the audience? Yes, please.
So I spoke yesterday. I'm from California, from the U.S. We've built a laboratory where we're testing NG112 911 for us that includes core service providers, call processing equipment providers, and CAD developers. Is there an opportunity for us to partner with the lab that we built to support some testing here in Europe with vendors that may have solutions here that are trying to test to the standard, because it's all the same standard. So just wonder if there's an opportunity for us to partner with you.
And thank you very much for raising this. In fact, our program for tests and interoperability is very open. The way we run it is testing solutions against the standards we have developed. So the participation to this is open to the world, and it's basically jumping and subscribing to be part of these plug tests. So if in order to put you in touch with the right experts, what I would suggest is if you drop me a line to this email, or we'll talk about it afterwards, I will put you in touch with the guys that run this in my team, because we will be excited to have a broader range of participation in the plug tests.
Okay, thank you. And if there's vendors here that want to talk to me directly as well to test with what we're doing in the U.S., let me know, because we can support that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other question? Yes, please.
Hello, I would like to ask how ready is ETSI on innovation use cases that are currently being run across Europe, let's say augmented reality calls or Internet of Things or drones that we have seen. How you follow the innovation and what is coming, and how you plan, let's say, to incorporate it in new standards?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, we do two things. First, we usually rely on our experts, which is yourselves. So basically, industry does have a very good insight of what's coming, and it's this industry that brings this directly into the committees. But besides that, so on top of that, we have a little unit that's devoted to looking at what's going on in the R&D environment. So we get connections with the R&D programs in the EU, and we have connections with the universities. And what we try and do is check in, and we have built a kind of foresight roadmap, or it's not roadmap, it's a radar of where the evolution in technology goes, so that we can point at it and then make also our members aware, so that if they want to bring any of those things into standardization, we can just drive it through. So this is
we have questions from the audience. I think there's still time for one or two questions.
Thank you. My name is Johannes Valsvard from the Norwegian regulator. So thank you both Mr. Vialen and Mr. Romero for very interesting presentations. And this is a question that perhaps goes to both of you. I don't know, but I will give Vialen the first shot. As you might know, the Accessibility Act enters into force in 2025, and it has a lot of elements that are important both for emergency sectors, but also for general communications sector. So, and also in addition to the Electronic Communications Code and Article 111, putting up a general notion for accessibility. So, landing into my question here, what are your thoughts and initiatives on this new regulatory reality that we find especially in Europe in terms of accessibility and access also to emergency services?
Yeah, thank you. If you, I'll start replying. I hope I understand the question properly, because we have some echo here, and sometimes it's difficult to. So if I don't, just let me know. Indeed, ETSI has been working on the Accessibility Act in the original one, and we have produced a specification that replies to this Accessibility Act. We know that this one is going to be revised now, and we are waiting for a standardization request to come out with the second part of this e-Accessibility Act, which we are waiting for, and we are eagerly waiting for. And the committees are put together just to start the work on this act. For that, actually, we cooperate as well with SEN and SENELEC. So it's not just ETSI working on it, but also in cooperation with SEN and SENELEC. So we are just waiting for it to be triggered for us to get engaged in the evolution or revision of the standards we have now. I hope they answered the question. Thank you.
Do you want to respond as well, Jukka? Okay. Okay, so just learned that it's more ETSI related. I think I forgot to introduce the third speaker. So, or is there any other question? I think sorry, yes. We still have time.
It's a question about open science. And it's a question coming from the academic point of view, that why we are not having open science and open all the material that is inside ETSI and 3GPP and other standardization groups. So my question is that if you have a plan on that, or opening all the material, or as it's also a directive from EU that we need to follow open science practice.
I think it's true. It's hard to hear. I think you're talking about opening all the material that we have. In ETSI, all material is publicly available. to all. You don't even need to be a member to get access to all our standards and everything for free. The only material which is not accessible is the drafting material, which in ETSI is only kind of closed to ETSI members, to all ETSI members, but all the other public material is absolutely available. But I will let Jukka.
And that applies also all the 3GPP material. So it's open access. Everything is open.
I understand that everything is open, but as we move on, the part of innovation and let's say how the 5G moved, the part of the drafting of a standard, it will be interesting for the whole community to know. And that's why I'm asking the part of opening the whole discussion on and the drafting of standards.
But again, all this in 3GPP is open.
Okay, I think we need to move on, and I would like to introduce the third speaker. As I said before, unfortunately, he couldn't make it on stage. So we will hear or see a video, and the presenter is Emilio Dávila. He is with ICT Standardization at the European Commission. And I would like to ask you to start the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Emilio Dávila. I'm working in the European Commission, the DG Connect. Some of you may know me for the time when I was following the eCall file. Now I'm the head of the ICT standardization sector. And I would like to thank you, EENA, and in particular Cristina Lumbreras, for having me invited to present you the EU strategy and support to standardization. But unfortunately, I cannot be with you today. I would really have enjoyed to share this moment in the conference. Anyhow, let me try to give you an overview of how the EU support standardization and the importance of standardization, and in particular in a sector like emergency telecommunications, the citizens. Standards are really high these days in the political agenda of the European Union. And because they are really important, they are not only technical documents that prescribe some specifications, but they are an essential part of everyday life. If we have managed to continue working during the pandemic, for instance, it's thank you to the standards. Everybody knows now what is FFP2 or FFP3 regarding mask, and also if I'm talking to you now, it's because there are some standards, and you have hundreds of standards in your mobile phone or in your laptop or your computers. And in particular for new technologies, there are more and more possibilities to have common standards that allow the deployment and uptake by the market. These standards also for the benefit of the citizens. So for these reasons, we have adopted a package on standardization on a nice date, the 2nd of February of 2022. And this package comprises a communication explaining the EU standardization strategy, a proposal for a technical amendment to the regulation on the standardization, a report on the implementation of this regulation, and then a union work program. You will find a lot of interesting information there. But let me come back to the point, why do we need the standards, and in particular digital standards? They are important because they enable the interoperability of systems and services, allowing, and this in the case of the European Union, with 27 member states having cross-border solutions. So think about the possibility of every citizen to call the 112, which is based on TS12 3GPP standards, or the eCall, where we have standards that allow, in your case you have an accident, irrespective of where you are and where the vehicle comes from, to contact the PSAPs and be in contact with emergency response centers. They also allow prevent the duplication of effort, so you don't need to make new research, but you just based on the standards that are available and you build your own innovation. And very important, for instance, also for public services, they avoid vendor lock-in. So if you have a public procurement, then you don't need to be locked into certain suppliers, but because of using standards, you can interchange the different systems with different suppliers, and there are of course other benefits that you have in these slides. So for these reasons, in the EU, we have adopted this strategy to raise the political level of the standards. And why? Because we have seen that these days there are issues. There are first geopolitical issues with some countries trying to use a standardization strategy to pursue the geopolitical ambitions. And the EU should do the same and lead the standardization work at global level, so we ensure that our values and technologies are incorporated into the standards. And there is also an increased complexity, particularly in the digital area, with hundreds of different standardization bodies. So it needs resources, and we need really to ensure that our values are there. And for that we need good governance. Our standardization organizations are based on WTO principles, so with openness, transparencies, but the governance could be improved, for instance, to have more inclusiveness and ensure that the users are heard in the technical work. And it's important to ensure that the system is delivering according to the EU policies. And for that, we need to improve the priority setting and also the speed. We need to ensure that there is a timely delivery of the standards needed to support public policies and regulations. And for this, you have here the slide showing the 5 different streams where we are working. So first, strengthening and leveraging on the EU standardization system, with in particular the ESOs, the European Standards Organizations, ENELEC and ETSI. And also to give them, to explain the priorities that we have in terms of standardization, assisted, for instance, with the creation of a high-level forum, so we create more momentum for standardizations, and with including engagement with the Parliament and Council. The Commission will create the figure of the Chief Standardization Officers and better coordinate through the creation of a EU Excellence Hub on standardizations. And all these priorities will be reflected better way in the Annual Union Work Programme and will be the basis of funding the standardization actions. We will insist on having more good governance principles, and again with more integrity, inclusiveness, and allowing free access to standards, for instance, for citizens and SMEs in case that they are in support of the regulations. And for that we will work at close collaborations with our standardization organization. And a set of action standing with better coordination and support of the participation of the EU experts in international standardization to ensure that the EU is leading the way there. And then also more support through our research and innovation projects, creating more awareness programs for education and skills, so to bring a new generation of experts into standardization arena. And as a summary here, you can see the 4 activity layers where standardizations needs to interlink with. So the regulations and the major policy is the support of standards. We also support the research and innovations that will advance the state of the art and bring new technologies in the standards. And then you have also the international sphere where we need to cooperate with like-minded countries to ensure that there is no barriers to trade, for instance, and to ensure that our values are integrated. So all the actions we have support, as you have, and they are reflected in this strategy. Let me explain you some concrete examples of this support. So instruments, setting the priorities via our regulatory proposals and also our communications where we set up our policies. Then concrete support via the research and pilot projects, so they can bring the contribution, and we insist a lot that they should bring when relevant the contribution to standardization organizations. And we thank also to European Standardization Organization that are taking this breach very seriously. And then we have these mandates where we ask the European Standardization Organizations to work to deliver standards to support our policies and regulations for the benefit of the citizens. Very important, the standardization is about cooperation, it's also bottom-up exercise, so we need to liaise with the stakeholders. And for that, we insisted that the public and private partnerships where the Commission takes part include standardization and important work streams there. And then, last but not least, we fund directly standardization activities. I have told you through research projects, but also with direct grants to the ESOs for those priorities that are identified in the annual EENA work program, or if there is money available for the ICT standardization rolling plan, and direct grants, small ones, around 5 to 10,000 euros to fund direct participation of experts in international standardizations to support EU interest and values. So, just to give you a summary, you have where we express our standardization needs and priorities, the annual EENA work program, strategic priorities, standardization urgencies, and close link to the EU political agenda, and including where an standardization mandate could be expected. And the rolling plan, which is more technical and is for ICT standardization, and is drafted together with MSP. Here you have the composition of the MSP, so you see that we try to bring together all the stakeholders, standardization bodies, European and international, formal and other fora, member states, representative, and then industry associations, but also user and consumers. So we can work together, they can advise the Commission, we can have better together an idea of the priority needs. And this is what the rolling plan is for. So you have the review of the different policies for the different topics where standardization is identified as important. And this means technology sectors like could be data, 5G, Internet of Things, but also societal interests, like it could be ICT for standardization for environment, or e-health, agile aging, or emergency telecommunications, which is the reason of my intervention here. This is drafted together with the Commission and the experts, and it's including ongoing and available work. So if you want to know who is doing what in which sector, you can go to the rolling plan. And it also includes a dashboard to follow up the progress of the act. Let me give you a couple of examples before I end on the things relevant to the Congress today. So for emergency communication and public warning system, here you see the two actions that are identified. And in particular, I think that there is already work going on, for instance, with MTEL and the AML protocols for the transmission of caller location information. But it's important also to start working on making the access to emergency response centers and PSAPs fully available to people with accessibility issues. And the rolling plan again is not only for ESOs, but it's also a call for international standardization organizations, foreign consortiums, so IEEE, W3C, etc., to work in these areas. And we know that they are taking seriously the actions that are included in the rolling plan. For eCall, there is even more actions there, like the migration to taking into account the next generation technologies, or including eCall as part of the new generation of connected and automated vehicles, how this could be integrated in the platform. And you see other actions like aftermarket devices, etc. Important message to you: if you believe that there are more actions that are needed, please don't hesitate to contact either any of the representative of the standardization organization, in particular ETSI or CENELEC, or directly the Commission, or any of the associations that are member of the multi-stakeholder platform, and bring your issues, because this is a rolling plan, it's a live document, and we are updated every day. And this is all from my side. Again, I'm sorry not being able to be with you, but if you have any additional questions, please send us an email, contact us, we are there available to you. Thank you very much, and good continuation. And I hope next time I will be able to be there. Bye.
Okay, it's again right in time. Yes, before I'm closing the session, let's thank our speakers with another big round of applause. Yeah, have to make some announcements. So in this track, in this room, we continue with the topic cybersecurity. There's another track 2, about preventing violence against emergency services. And industry sessions continue in track 3. So thanks for joining and see you next time. Bye.